So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the topDNS Best Practice webinar number 10. How is DNS abuse actually measured? There are still people joining the room, so we will wait 1 or 2 more minutes until everyone is there. So please stay on the line. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the topDNS Best Practice webinar part 10. How is DNS abuse actually measured? My name is Lars Steffen. I'm the head of Digital Infrastructures, Resilience and International Matters at ECO, the Association of the Internet Industry. And I'm your host for today. Today we have a very interesting lineup of speakers on our agenda. So with us, we have Professor Maciej Korczynski. He's with KOR Labs. And today he will share information about the methods of measurement and their implications that they're taking at measuring DNS abuse, because this is one of the topics that is broadly discussed in the industry. How do we define and also how to measure the phenomenon of DNS abuse? Second, we have with us today Sourena Maroofi. He's the founder of URLAbuse. Thank you for being with us. And last but not least, we have with us Rowena Schoo. She's the Director of Programs and Policy at the NetBeacon Institute. And before we dive into substance, I would like to take you briefly through our housekeeping rules. So this is a webinar, so of course this is being recorded, and the recording will be available after the meeting, and it will be publicly available. As an audience participant, you will be muted throughout the webinar, but of course you can always ask questions. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you have the questions part in the GoToWebinar dashboard, but you can also submit your questions verbally by pushing the raising your hand button. Of course, we will unmute you, and please state your name and your affiliation before you ask a question. When you ask your questions via the questions pod, I will monitor the questions pod throughout the webinar and raise my hand and interrupt the speakers to state your question. After the webinar, you will see a quick survey before you close the window. It's always a great opportunity for you to provide feedback, what you liked about the webinar, or where we can improve our offerings and services in the future even better. This is a topDNS webinar. This is just to take you briefly who is behind topDNS. So topDNS is the ECO initiative on DNS abuse. And like every initiative, we are building on the support of a handful of sponsors that you can see here, who are providing support that we can have this series of webinars throughout every year, but also workshops at Nordic Domain Days, at MORG meetings. We do regular webinars and also workshop sessions with the European Commission, and also at other industry events like CloudFest, for example. We are also engaged with the Internet Infrastructure Forum, where we bring in the industry perspective when it comes to improve cross-industry collaboration. And next to the sponsors, we also have a list of supporters from the hosting industry. And as you can see, as the last one in the list, it's AV-Test. And I would like to take this opportunity to already let you know that next week we will launch as topDNS our own series of abuse reports, the collaboration with this institute to cover the abuse measurement for the ISP side of the industry. If you are interested in participating in topDNS, this is a cool bunch of people you are able to join on the steering committee. If you're interested in this, just let me know, or go to the topDNS website on topdns.eco, where you can also find the recordings and the written reports of the 9 previous webinars in this series, and all the materials and reports from the workshops that we've done in the future, and also reports from the past and announcements for the future. And just to cover a few dates, so at the end of the month, there will be the ICANN 84 AGM in Dublin, where you can meet, I think, all of us in person if you want to learn more about KOR Labs, URLAbuse, the NetBeacon Institute, but also topDNS and ECHO. On the 5th of November, there will be another webinar at ECHO covering brand TLDs, because one of the next big things in the ICANN space that is on the horizon is the next new GTLD program launching next year. If you don't have the time to spend a full week at an ICANN meeting, we will provide on the 12th of November a readout webinar where we will summarize the highlights and key takeaways from this meeting. And last but not least, you have another opportunity to meet us in person again on the 19th of November in Berlin, where we have a panel discussion about email security and digital sovereignty in the context of domain names and also TLDs, with an excellent lineup of speakers. You can find all those events and webinars on our website, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter if you would like to have them on a regular basis in your mailbox. And with this, the promo part of this session is over, and let's dive into substance. And with this, I would like to hand over to Maciej.
Can I share my screen, please?
Yes, let me.
That's the only laptop I have, and I need.
Yes, we can see us. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. And you can hear me also. Perfect. Okay. So thanks, Lars, for the introduction. It's great being here. So my name is Maciej Korczynski. I'm professor in Grenoble Alpes University and at KOR Labs. And today I will discuss one of the aspects of our measurements, which is related to uptimes. And the title of my presentation is Evidence to Action, Measuring Abuse Persistence. So before discussing the uptime measurements, I will just mention that at KOR Labs we have a measurement platform that we use for our research, and is also used extensively to collect and reach, structure, aggregate data for NetBeacon reporter, but mainly for NetBeacon map project that Rowena will discuss in a couple of minutes. So as an input to our system, we provide URLs, malicious URLs, phishing URLs, malware delivery URLs. Then we collect passive information, active collection. We get the page content, transaction traces like har logs. We collect artifacts, downloaded resource fingerprints. We make screenshots, get the technologies of websites at the root domain names and at the FQDNs, and finally at malicious URLs. We perform scans, active scans of a variety of DNS records. We get the registration information. Based on all this data, we also give some risk context, reputation. We perform also certain classifications. And finally, we also measure uptimes. So how we define uptimes, that sometimes that changes from also a research study to from one to another, but generally it is the time between the URL was blacklisted, let's say by anti-phishing working group, and until it is mitigated at the DNS level. Mainly not mainly at the authoritative name servers, or the website is suspended, hosting or hosting account is suspended. Okay, so what kind of measurements we perform? First, we perform on regular basis for 1 month DNS measurements. We retrieve DNS records, we get registration information, we download the content. For 30 days, at the beginning, we perform much more fine-grained measurements, meaning like more frequently, and then less frequently at the end of the month. And those measurements, they give us comprehensive, not complete, but quite comprehensive view of the actions that were taken. So here on the right, you see the screenshot of our OSU platform. So before diving into some examples, I would like to present or discuss briefly 3 perspectives on mitigation. It's nothing new, I would say here, but quite important still things to mention. So the first perspective is the most important, which is user or victim perspective, and the goal here is to mitigate abuse, as much abusive URL as fast as possible, either at the website level, hosting, DNS level, at the authoritative name server, so that the users, potential victims, do not visit, let's say, phishing websites, and they do not put their credentials, or they do not download malware on their machines. So here on the right, you see that the domain name was mitigated at the DNS level, either by registry or registrar, and it cannot be the website cannot be visited. On the left side, the mitigation took place at the hosting level, and the hosting account was suspended, and the URL cannot be visited. So the second perspective is the attacker's perspective. So ideally, mitigation should take place at the hosting and the domain name level, because in this sense, it will increase barriers for abuse for the attacker. So to give you more details, if for example the hosting is suspended, but not maliciously registered domain names, the attackers can reuse those domain names, get hosting somewhere else, and within seconds point and associate the domain name with the IP address of the website, of the malicious website. On the other hand, if the domain names are if the domain name is suspended, is mitigated, but not the hosting, then the attacker can, for example, go to another registrar, abuse another registrar, abuse another TLD, register domains with malicious intent, and once more within seconds make the association between a domain name and the hosting level and hosting infrastructure that was not mitigated, and continue malicious operations. Now, this sounds that sounds reasonable. However, there are challenges, and especially from the defender's perspective. By defenders here, let's concentrate on hosting providers, registrars, and registry operators. Why this is challenging? Because the suspension, the mitigation can be done when the evidence is available. So imagine that the hosting is suspended, and then the registrar, registry, someone at the help desk from the, let's say, registrar comes, tries to visit the website, but the hosting is suspended, so there is no website, there is no screenshot, meaning that there is no evidence. So there is a possibility that the registrar will not take action at the DNS level. Okay, so the next part I would like to show you is I would like to show you a couple of examples from our platform related to our uptime measurements. So here, let's take a look at the screenshot of the website, malicious website. The target is SBI Securities. That was blacklisted by anti-phishing working group. Here we see the HTML content. It is obfuscated. And now let's go to the uptimes. First, let's take a look at the domain name. We have no content, meaningful content there. When we go to the uptime, we have 3 uptimes at the DNS level, registration, and content. And here at the content level, we see a series of measurements, HTTP statuses, titles, and so on and so on. And at some point, measurement number 5, we see that there is no content anymore, and there is no valid A record. So let's go to the DNS level. Let's take a look at measurement 4. We see the IP address here. At measurement 5, there is no A record. So let's take a look at the next measurements, and here we see NX domain at the measurement 10. We can take a look at the registration data at the measurement 10 also. We see that the domain name is not active, and we can look at the details. The domain status is server hold, indicating that the mitigation took place was performed by the registry operator. Okay. Now let's move to another example. So let's take a look at the screenshot of the URL. It's unpaid toll invoice a phishing website. Let's take a look at the uptimes. Let's start with content. First 2 measurements, we see that the website is up, and measurement 3, we see that this is it is suspected phishing, and this website is served by Cloudflare. Now let's take a look at DNS measurements, and here we can see so measurement 10, we see that there is no valid A record once more. Let's take a look at DNS measurements, and this time we have NX domain straight away. Once more, we can take a look at the whois information at that time to confirm what was the intermediary that took action. And once more here, we see server hold as opposed to the client hold, and server hold once more. It means that it was a registry operator that took action and mitigated abusive domain name, maliciously registered domain name. Here you see also the classification by KOR Labs with 80% confidence maliciously registered domain name. So another phishing website, once more our Malcolm classifier classifies it as maliciously registered. We can first take a look at content uptime. And we see that at some point the title changes, and if we visit the website at that very moment, we do not see the same content. And this time we see a different website, and it is very likely to be drive by download website. So it was not taken down very fast, and therefore the attacker performed 2 different campaigns most probably. And then we see NX domain at some point. Once more, we can cross-check with the registration information, and we see here server hold once more, indicating that the registry operator took action here. Okay. So another example, and this is quite important also example, because what we see is that the attackers more and more often use subdomain providers hosting. Here we have like Firebase hosting that gives also gives subdomains to the registrants, in particular to the malicious ones, and we also track those services, for example, so that we do not send notifications to registrars which would be inappropriate. So we've seen the malicious website targeting Netflix users. Here we could potentially suspect the mitigation at the FQDN level, fully qualified domain name level, but that's not the case with Firebase. Of course, Whois will not show us anything, because that would mean that, for example, in this case, perfectly legitimate service domain name is suspended. That's not the case, and what we see instead, we see that at some point it serves Firebase serves site not found, and this is mitigated at the level of a URL website. Now, final example. There is a URL where our classifier classifies the underlying domain name as legitimate but compromised website. So this is also potentially interesting case, because the domain name itself was registered less than 2 months before being blocklisted. So that might be potentially indication of malicious registration. When we take a look at the website on the domain name level, it corresponds to the domain name. There are certain web technologies that are different from the web technologies used to build the malicious website. We see also the screenshot of the website. And then let's take a look at the uptimes. Once more, we start with the content, and surprisingly, we see no valid A record. Okay, so let's take a look at the DNS level, and we see at the very beginning there is no error. Then there is NX domain indicating that the action was taken at the DNS level, and then no error once more, which might indicate that the registrant came back to a DNS operator saying that the domain name is actually legitimate. And what we see that the domain name was at the end of the measurements resolves to the same IP address. And at the measurement 21, we see appropriate mitigation, and 404 at the website level, where the website, the malicious website, is being mitigated. Okay, so to conclude, very brief, I would say, things. First of all, collecting evidence is not trivial. Mitigation is not easy, and also measurements are difficult, and interpretations also of the results of our measurements might not be always very trivial. So thank you very much, and we will, I guess, pass to the questions now, maybe at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maciej. Thank you very much for providing insights to your work and the way that you measure and track instances and collect evidence. Sourena, you will now dive into substance on phishing a little bit more deeper. So let's switch the share of screens.
Okay. I guess I cannot share my screen. The button is inactive.
Let me. Now you should be able to share your screen.
Share screen. Entire screen. Maybe not. Window. Okay. Share. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank
Please
you.
go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sourena Maroofi. Today I'm going to present some statistics and raise some questions about phishing and in general some insights about blocklist feeds and how phishing detection works, the difference between different blocklists, and a little bit about me. I'm working at KOR Labs and URLAbuse, so I am in the both company. And thank you very much, Lars, for the opportunity. The topics that we will cover today. So we are going to talk about phishing statistics a little bit. We are going to show some statistics related to different organizations, institutions, and then we're going to ask this question, why phishing is on the rise, and then we're going to review the takedown procedure together, and then going a little bit deeper into the methodologies of the blocklist feed. And I'm going to discuss a little bit about a modern blocklist. So what is the definition of modern blocklist? What is the difference between different types of blocklist? And a little bit about how URLAbuse work at the end of the presentation. So here you can see two tables about the statistics that published by Intrial and NetBeacon. So I chose these two institute organizations because of a simple reason. For NetBeacon, I know that the statistics is very accurate because I generated the statistics, so I know it works. And I personally verified every single URL, so I have full trust on the statistics. And Intrial, because probably they are one of the institutes, organizations that are working since 2020 to 2021. They have statistics every year, and I don't need to go to deeper into separate feeds, for example, for having some statistics, because it's all here. So as you can see, the numbers are talking here. So almost always we had increase. The amount of phishing is going higher and higher every year. Regarding NetBeacon statistics, I didn't have yearly statistics, so I chose July of every year from 2022, 23, 4, and 5. And for Intrial, it's a yearly statistics. The numbers are very different, but it's not important. The difference is not important. The most important thing is that we can see clearly that the number of maliciously registered domains is going higher and higher every year. Especially from 2024 to 2025, we see that both of the reports shows that by 8% and by 35% is going higher. The good news is that both of them use the same methodology based on the KOMAR technology published a few years ago, so it's comparable. Both of the statistics are comparable. The core is KOMAR, and then there are probably a little bit of changes in the methodology. Both institutes provide the methodology in depth, so you can find the methodology on their website. But after seeing these statistics, we need to answer at some point of time, we need to answer these questions. We need to understand why the amount of phishing increasing each year. What factors are driving in the increase of phishing attack? Which part of the whole phishing fighting ecosystem has a flaw? Is it like the registrars not taking down? Is it because of the registry? Is it reporter? Is it source of data? So what is wrong that in spite of all the effort that ICANN is doing, improving registry agreement, registrar agreement, all the registries efforts, registrars effort, everyone is working hard. I see, especially in the past 2 years, I see that actually everyone is collaborating, but still the numbers are going higher and higher actually. If you see the real numbers, not the percentage, you will see that I think based on Intrial statistics, we have more than 1 point something million phishing URLs, and that's huge actually. So, and that's unique domain names, maliciously registered domain names. So the question is, which part is wrong? I know that almost all the registries and registrars, at least those that I'm working with, they are taking down domain names. If they receive a good report, if it's backed with evidence, I know that they are doing a good job. I mean, they do their best. at least to take down domain name. So what is wrong actually? After sending, in the past 2-3 years, after sending some days more than 2,000 emails reports to registries and registrars every day, I realized that actually the problem is not a single entity by its own. The problem is the connection, the coordination, not the capability of each entity. So none of them is doing wrong actually. The connection between these entities is somehow wrong. So let's see how the whole procedure of takedown is working. So basically, it works like this. On the left, you can see that there are some block lists. They provide some URLs, and then there are some organizations, security vendors, for example, or even individuals who are working in cybersecurity, and they start to collect evidence, taking screenshots, metadata, and all the necessary information, all the necessary evidence that is needed to take down, at least to verify that something is phishing. And believe me, phishing is not the only problem. We are not even going to talk about, for example, malware distribution, traffic distribution systems. Lots of other problems are out there that is not easy to verify. But let's just for now focus on the simplest possible problem of DNS abuse, which is phishing, and probably one of the oldest. So after collecting the evidence by security vendors, the report is sent to registries, registrars, and then now it's time for registry and registrars to verify the reports to see if it's actually phishing or not. If they find out that yes, it's phishing, the takedown action will happen. If it's not phishing, then they're gonna reject the report. They're gonna probably send emails. Some of them they say that it's not phishing. Some of them say that we couldn't, for example, say that it's phishing. Sometimes they say that, okay, give us more document, more information, more evidence if it's phishing or not. It's all well. So what is wrong? Based on my experience in the past 3-4 years of sending reports, almost every day, I realized that actually collecting evidence is the most important part. We can never force a registry or a registrar to take down a domain name just simply because we feel like it's phishing. Even if the domain name is strange, okay, I know it's phishing, but at the end of the day, a registrar is a business. They cannot just take down a domain name. They have customers, and they need to at least answer to the customer, those legit customers, that, hey guys, I took down your domain name. But why? Because I feel like it's phishing. It doesn't work like that. I mean, putting a lot of pressure on different business won't work. We need to provide enough evidence for them. And that's the job of our security vendors, the community, expert people, and everyone. So the question is, who is in the best position to collect those evidences? We know that registries and registrars probably won't collect evidence by themselves, and probably at the time of report, even sometimes it's too late to collect evidence. And another thing is that collecting evidence, especially for phishing these days, we can see big campaigns, we can see infrastructures, phishing as a service infrastructures that are huge actually. They are registering hundreds of domain names per day. It's difficult to collect evidence, especially a screenshot, for several reasons. I brought here 7 reasons. For example, you don't have enough information for the attack, or you don't know the methodology behind collecting the URL, you don't know which campaign it belongs to, you don't have the right IP address to open the page, you don't have, for example, you are not opening it in the right time, right path, or for example, you don't know the correct user agent to open the page, or not having the correct header. All of them are very important. I've seen phishing that works in very specific state in US. So if you open it from another state, it won't work. We saw that type of attack actually in toll roads. It was last year, and I think until August this year, we had those type of attacks that it worked only in a specific state in US. So who knows all these information, all the information to open the page and see the screenshot so that they can collect information? We need to be honest, at some point, collecting information is all about collecting the screenshot. If you cannot collect the right screenshot, you won't have network analysis, you don't have network requests, you don't have anything. And who is not considered as an evidence, because at the end of the day, registrars and registries, they do have WHOIS, they own WHOIS data. So we need to have the right screenshot, or at least we need to have enough information telling the registrar, hey guys, I know that this domain belongs to this specific campaign, and I know the pattern, and I know this campaign works like this, and here is the list of the domain they register, and here is my reason for that. So any kind of information that they can act upon. And this is very important, but who is in the best position to collect that type of information? So after all these years of working in this field, I realized that actually block lists are in the best position actually to collect this type of information. Why block lists? And the question is that true for all the block lists or not? It's actually not. So we need to know the difference between different type of block lists out there, because we are dealing with different block lists. So as far as I know, we have more than 20, 30 different block lists out there. Some of them analyzed by ICANN 2 years ago in a document that they published, some of them not. But most of the URL and domain block lists that are working out there are based on two methods that I call them traditional block list feeds or modern block list feeds. Let's see how they work in general. So traditional block list feed, they usually collect information from email honeypots, third-party reports, or reverse IP domain. So email honeypots, they receive some emails, probably the emails that are in spam, and they list all the URLs that they find in the emails. That's easy to verify. If you look at the data of the block list, you see a lot of advertisement or spam links that are not necessarily phishing. Or you probably have seen some unsubscribe links because they are very similar to phishing. They have a form, they collect information, and yet then you click, okay, unsubscribe me from the advertisement. You see those links in the block list, but they are not actually phishing. But still you see it because the source of the data is email honeypots. Third-party reports. Well, one of the biggest problem that actually you need to do technical stuff to understand this problem, and if you have done it, definitely you have faced that problem actually, that you have one target but with different type of names. Sometimes it's Facebook, sometimes it's Facebook Inc., sometimes it's Facebook Corp, sometimes it's Meta. Sorry. And you have different names because it comes from a third party, and each third party that is reporting the stuff to the block list, they name it differently. And that makes it difficult because if you want to, for example, create a machine learning stuff, create a new model out of the ground truth data, the first step is to normalize all the data. And that needs another machine learning system just to normalize the names. And then the problem of trusting a third party. I mean, you really need to know the people that are reporting stuff to you. You don't know it. If the guy is not expert, they may send a lot of stuff that are not actually phishing. Or if the guy wants to, for example, send some URLs for any reason that are not phishing, out of a lot of URL that he reports per day, probably they get in without any kind of verification. And the third method that is used a lot by block list are reverse IP domain. This is something that is useful actually in traditional block list. So it works like this. It's very easy. You need a seed, and you know that seed is malicious. And then what they do is to reverse IP domain. They get the IP address. They find all other domain names on the same IP address, and they just list it like that. And then from one domain, you have probably 200 more domain names. That's very cool, as long as you know what you are doing. So the thing is that if, for example, you do something like that with Cloudflare, which works as a reverse proxy, you will probably list a lot of benign domains because one IP address may belong to lots of any kind of reverse proxy, or CDN has the same problem actually. And then you need to have a wide list of CDNs and reverse proxy systems to know that, hey, I cannot do that for this one. Reverse IP domain does not work for this specific seed because the IP belongs to Cloudflare, for example. Or if you somehow, your seed is actually not malicious, but it's compromised, then you will add a lot of benign domains to the blacklist. And that is something that happened before. And there is a published paper actually on that. 250,000 URLs in one blacklist, all of them listed, simply because they thought one of them is malicious. So they received one of them and they list all of them. But in modern blacklist feeds, the procedure is completely different. A modern blacklist does not use those type of stuff. They follow the campaigns. For example, they are based on detection systems. You see, they have a machine learning system or any kind of, I don't know, rule-based, machine learning, signature-based, whatever system that actually detects something by itself, independent of the reporter. So even if the reporter sent them something, they detect it by themselves. They don't rely on just a simple report that they receive. Of course, with machine learning, you have a risk of false positive. That's something that you cannot avoid it, but you can minimize it at least. But the good news is that with the machine learning system, as the target is a specific list of target, most of the time, you have a normalized brand names. You won't have Facebook sometimes, and sometimes Facebook Inc. and sometimes Facebook Corp. You always have Facebook, or you always have Meta. All the names are always the same. Another thing that modern blacklist feeds are doing are investigating into campaigns. For example, they follow the campaign. So most of the time, for example, at URLAbuse, most of the time, even the domain is still not used in any kind of attack. As soon as it is registered, we know it. So we wait so that the guy starts using the domain. And we know that this domain will be used. Sometimes even we know that it will be used in 2 days in a campaign, because we can see the task, for example. If you get really into those campaigns, you can see a lot of good information that actually you can go further and find out, for example, how they do things, how they register domain names, what is the next TLD that they're gonna choose. That's very funny actually, because we have seen cases that the guy said that, okay, he scheduled a task on his server that's from, for example, this specific date on, register from this TLD. Don't use that TLD anymore. And these are things that actually, if you start doing investigation into campaigns, you can find out. And then we have a very concrete and accurate information about every single record of data that you publish in the list. And then feedback through expert reviews. The modern blacklist constantly train the model, constantly use a new model to train and to detect, because the detection system use the models actually to detect the stuff. So the feedback that we receive through the expert review, it gives us more insight into all campaigns and the detection systems, and then we can improve it constantly. This is very important. So all the blocklists are not able to collect all the evidence. So that's why you see a lot of blocklists out there are just publishing raw information like domain names, URLs, IP address, and that's it. Because even if they want to collect more, they are not capable of collecting the screenshots or things like that, because they don't know the nature of the domain names. And that's very important. You need to understand the nature of the phishing, where it comes from. Not only phishing, all different types of attacks. So that was the initial way of thinking that actually we designed URLAbuse at the very beginning. So we realized that actually, if we start using the data from other blocklists, probably even the machine learning that we are training will have a lot of problem actually, because we weren't sure that even the ground truth data is ground truth data. So at some point we realized that actually we need to check every single URL manually to realize that, okay, if it's really phishing or not. And most of the times not most of the time, but lots of times actually we had this problem that we couldn't find out that actually if it's phishing or not. We were just dealing with a simple, for example, domain name, not knowing the fact that how they collected even this domain name. We had just the confidence of 80% and then a domain that is blacklisted. So we designed this system to receive even trusted reports, user reports, suspicious domains. We also do a scan on a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, we are the one who are collecting all the necessary information, and we are the one that using our own machine learning system and our own detection system in general to detect and score the output. And something that goes to the output, to the final list, we have a concrete reason why it is in the list. So it's not like we have a lot of URL that we have no clue why it is in the list because someone reported to us. No, every single URL that exists in the block list, there is a reason behind it. And it's possible even to share the reason with the consumer that, hey, this is blacklisted by us because of this specific reason. Oh. So finally, what we do at URLAbuse, generally, these are things that we do per day: analyzing phishing campaigns, phishing as a service infrastructure, training models, providing evidence, for example, to take down proceed. That's actually very difficult. That's a topic of another presentation, that there are some registrars that even if you provide evidence, they say, hey, there is no logo, so it's not phishing. Well, that's not our problem if there is no logo on the phishing page. And scanning hundreds of millions of fully qualified domain names, that's very difficult actually. And the most important thing is to verify every single report that we receive from third parties, because lots of people contribute. Since the data is free and publicly available, lots of people are actually very kind and contribute to the whole system. And the thing is that we cannot just publish what they said. So we have to spend a lot of time actually to verify those entries. And finally, help us fighting DNS abuse. So if you are a reporter, just ask us for a token and we're going to give you a token. You can start reporting URLs. All of your reports will be publicly available on the internet. You can use it and other people can use it. If you are a registry and registrar, just simply start consuming the data. It's not that difficult. I mean, all you have to do is to ask again, and we're going to give you the data, and that's it. If you are a researcher, you can always use our data, build your own detection system, and we are happy actually to help to improve your own system. If you have a system you want it to be improved, just reach out and just ask questions. We're going to help you to improve the system. Thank you very much. And if you have any question.
Thank you, Sourena. Thank you very much for providing so much information about what you're doing behind the scenes. And I'm already looking forward to next year's edition of this webinar, where you might also include the topDNS reports in your first slide of your deck. And we might run 3 or 4 minutes overtime. I hope this is okay for everyone who's participating in this webinar, because now we would like to hand over the floor to Rowena, who's now taking us to the latest updates from the NetBeacon MAP project. Rowena, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Lars. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. And you already also mentioned to me that you will cover the question from Christian Babas in the chat.
I will. Shout at me if I forget, but I plan to cover that at the end. All right, we are a little bit tight for time, so I'm going to try to stick to the bare essentials. So thanks very much for having me. I'm Rowena from the NetBeacon Institute. We are an institute that was created by a public interest registry in 2021. We are part of the registry, but we have an operational separation where the work that we do is much more external facing, and we work across the whole industry, largely working with TLDs, registrars, but also hosting providers and people who are outside the industry that want to understand abuse. And we do that to try to create a safer internet for everyone. primarily focusing on this term of art, DNS abuse, so phishing, pharming, malware, botnets, and spam when used as a delivery mechanism. And we provide free tools and services for the industry, but also people who are interested in reporting abuse, as well as educational materials and help however we can. So everything I'm talking about today is available free of charge. I'm going to mainly focus on one of our projects, which is about measurement that Sourena and Maciej have already sort of gently touched on. So the NetBeacon Measurement and Analytics Platform, or NetBeacon MAP for short, is a project that we created to really try to understand DNS abuse and how it's distributed across the ecosystem, where it's concentrated, whether it's being mitigated, and whether it's the case of a malicious registration or a issue of a compromised website. Because all of those data points were essential to understand for us to go about our mission. And if we were going to do it for ourselves, we wanted to make it available for everybody else as well. So as we mentioned, this is a collaboration with KOR Labs. We chose to partner with an academic partner so that we could have a really academically rigorous methodology, and we make that available on our website as part of our transparency about how we get to the numbers. So I'm going to take you through a little bit more of that. That screenshot you see on the bottom right is the full methodology that gives you all of the details, kindly laid out by Sourena and Maciej. There's also a link to a report where I try to summarize that in a bit more plain language. And then today I'm going to give you the high level understanding of how that works as well. So we essentially start with an input, which is from reputation block lists. There's 4 used in the MAP project at the moment. Once you have that input, there's a really big process of cleaning that data that goes on at KOR Labs. So not only are they deduplicating and removing IP addresses, getting it down to unique domains, which is what we count in our measurements, but they're also removing what they call special domains, so things that would be typically inappropriate to act at the DNS level for mitigation. So URL shorteners, dynamic DNS providers, subdomain providers, file sharing sites. There's a list of those maintained by KOR Labs that's publicly available. And then from that point, the really intense analysis starts. So KOR Labs do a lot of work to give us more information, just going beyond counting the domain names. They attempt to evidence those, they collect screenshots, and they take fingerprints of the website associated with the domain name. This information is really essential for the mitigation measurements that Maciej was talking about, but also it's important for figuring out if the website is compromised or if the domain name has been registered maliciously, because typically a compromised website is not going to be appropriate for DNS level mitigation because there's usually quite a lot of collateral damage. So that's what allows us to pull out information like this. So we put this in public reports, but we also put it in reports that we make available for registries and registrars that gives them insight into their own zones. And KOR Labs have a process for determining whether the domain name is malicious or compromised. There's been a few of these over the years. I know KOR Labs initially worked with AFNIC and CIDN, the Dutch and French registries, to develop an initial project which was called KOMAR. That is a similar project to what they use now, but actually what they developed is independent of that and developed specifically for MAP, but owned by KOR Labs. And so it uses a selection of different factors that they take from the fingerprinting of the domain name, and they use that to get this determination. And I think what's interesting and what maybe not everybody realizes is that different TLDs and different registrars often have a different makeup of malicious versus compromise. It's quite common that domain names probably need to be around for a little bit longer before you start getting websites built on them that have vulnerabilities that then get compromised. So that's one aspect of our data that I think people usually find very interesting to understand about their own abuse makeup. The other thing that we provide with people with is a mitigation rate. And as Maciej was explaining, this is a really comprehensive measurement of mitigation. We're basically looking at, has the harm stopped? And what that means when you're interpreting our data is that you need to be aware that it could have happened at a variety of different levels. It's not necessarily the registrar taking the action just because the domain name is allocated to the registrar. It could have been the registry putting it on server hold. It could have been the registrar putting it on client hold, for example, or it could be the host suspending the account. We take all of these collectively, and we have a measure of mitigation that is not specifically attributed to different entities at the moment. So that's something to be aware of when you're interpreting our data. Oh, and LEA means law enforcement agency. I was just trying to get to the point that lots of other actors can often be involved in this process of mitigation as well. The next thing that they do is they keep measuring these components, as Maciej was kind of breaking down, at regular intervals. And so that allows us to get a sense of how quickly the mitigation has happened. One thing to note, again, as you're looking at our data, these measurements happen at specific intervals. You can see them on the screen. That means that our data does tend to bunch into different groups based on this, which makes sense because that's when we measure. If a lot of mitigation happens between 15 and 30 minutes, you know, it's going to be bunched at either 15 or it's going to be bunched at 30 when we measure again. So as we take all the data we get from KOR Labs, we push that into a variety of presentation options. Most of them are freely available on our website and open, but for registries and registrars, we also have their dashboards that gives them insight into their own zone. And we're currently building some really exciting new functionality into that. So if you don't have access and you want it and you're a registry or registrar, please come talk to me. And I just wanted to give a few tips on like when you're looking at data projects and trying to interpret it. I think it's really important to familiarize yourself with the specifics of that project and how they present data. For MAP, that often means I explain these types of points on the screen. You know, we prioritize for accuracy over coverage. We try to be really consistent and reliable over time to allow comparisons between providers and over time. We're not trying to measure every bit of harm that exists. So that means most providers look at it and realize it's less than what they see in their abuse desks. As I mentioned, we have this holistic approach to measuring mitigation, and that's attribution agnostic. We do that for 30 days, and we deduplicate monthly with the domain names. So that means each month really exists as its own entity. Sometimes people ask me if we're like cumulatively taking domains on or off as they get mitigated. It's really a measurement per month, and it's the month that the domain name gets identified as abusive, not the month it was created. So it could have been created earlier, but we take the month where it goes onto the block list. And we do that for a number of reasons. It's kind of more of a feature than a bug, but it's something to be aware of as you're interpreting the data. Okay, I'm going to go to the question in the chat, which was around how do we prevent registrations? I think this is a really, really interesting and important question because a lot of the work that's happened in the industry so far, particularly with the GTLD amendments, they've required registries and registrars to take action to stop or disrupt harm once there is evidence, which makes sense. It's a lot easier to mitigate harm once you know that it's occurring and you have evidence. But I think a question I've been getting a lot recently is like, well, what do we do if we have a huge amount of malicious registrations coming in the door? Because what we find in MAP is that those malicious registrations are not evenly distributed across the ecosystem. They can be related to campaigns that target particular registrars or particular registries, and that can be really difficult to deal with. And so some of the advice that we usually give to people is to take the domains that you've had and you've mitigated already and try to figure out some patterns that apply to your business operation. So can you see similarities in those domains? Are they, for example, coming from the same account, same client account? Do they have similarities in the domain string? Lately, we've seen a lot of gov- and com-. So looking for those kind of alphanumeric patterns can help you try to identify them. Are there similar times or days when they're coming through as registrations? Are they all using an API, or do they have similarities in the method of payment? I know one registrar had success in limiting cryptocurrency payments to customers that they already knew and trusted, and that helped a lot with their intake of abuse. And then finally, really think about your anti-fraud processes. And so registrars will typically have a payment provider, and a lot of payment providers offer premium anti-fraud tools. And quite often, the payment provider will have a lot more information to help them determine at the point of registration if that registration is high risk based on the payment, because it's quite hard to predict what people do before they do it. But using those tools can sometimes be helpful to prevent fraud at the point of registration, which we believe then has an impact on whether or not you have abuse later on. And we also have a workflow that we've published on our website about it, so I'm happy to post that in the chat as well. That was a little bit of a speedy presentation, but I was trying to keep us to time.
No, thank you very much, Rowena, and thank you to each one of you for your presentations and providing insights on the work that you are doing and how you approach it and where the difference is. And my key takeaway is that tackling DNS abuse or any other harm that is online is not a one-stop shop thing. It is an ecosystem that we are dealing with, and there are multiple players and across the stack who can help, and they should collaborate closer on solving this. And I'm glad that not only topDNS but also other initiatives in the industry are heading in this direction to have closer ties across the stack and to work on mitigating abuse and fighting DNS abuse. With this, I would like to, yes, Rowena, please.
Sorry, one final point, just on the collaboration bit, we do have a second project called NetBeacon Reporter, which is all about this, is trying to connect the defenders, as Maciej called them, so registries, registrars, and hosting providers with people who have reports, and then we try to evidence those reports as much as possible as they flow through NetBeacon Reporter. And so if anyone's interested in that, really happy to talk to them more about it.
Yes, and there are also a handful of questions in the questions part that go quite into detail about the services that we just provided. So if there are any other further questions in that direction, also feel free to contact me. Happy to pass them on to all parties involved. And I think this is what it's all about, and that we work closer together. And if anyone is interested in this, please contact us. Please contact me. I'm happy to establish the contacts among each one of us. With this, and also taking a look at the time, I thank everyone for taking the time to attend this webinar. Thanking the presentations and the speakers for this very interesting insights. And hopefully we can do this next year again to provide updates on the progress that the industry is making on this, and also about the development of new tools, new insights, new data available that we are able to share. So with this, thank you everyone for attending, and having a nice rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lars. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.